I found out my wife was cheating on me because of hotel points. Not a confession, not a text message, not a stranger calling me from a hospital. Hotel points, loyalty points from a chain we had never stayed at together, accumulating on a shared rewards account that neither of us thought about enough to make private. I want to tell you about those points, and about the 14 months I spent not understanding what they meant, and about what happened when I finally did. Welcome. My name is Robert. I'm 49 years old. I have been in commercial lending for 22 years. I was married for 17 years to a woman named Patricia. We have 2 sons, 16 and 13. I am a person who pays attention to numbers for a living. I missed these ones for over a year, and I think about that regularly. Patricia and I shared a household email account. Not our primary accounts, a joint one we had set up years ago for utilities, subscriptions, family things. It received rewards, emails, frequent flyer statements, the things that accumulate in a marriage. I checked it maybe once a month, if that. I checked it on a Sunday afternoon in January because I was looking for a confirmation email about a hotel booking I had made for a work trip. I was scrolling through the inbox looking for my confirmation, and I saw a statement from a hotel rewards program. I almost skipped it. I almost kept scrolling. I opened it instead. The statement showed 412 points earned in the previous month. The name on the account was Patricia's. The stays were at a hotel in our city, not our city, because the stays were listed at a property 8 blocks from the office where Patricia worked. 8 blocks from her office. Patricia had told me on 3 separate occasions over the previous month that she had worked late, that she had stayed at a work event, that a client dinner had run long and she had taken a car home. She had not taken a car home. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. My sons were in the next room watching something. I could hear the television. I looked at the statement and I thought, how long has this been happening? The answer, when I built the picture, was 14 months. I want to tell you how I built the picture, because I think the building of it matters as much as anything that came after. I did not confront Patricia that Sunday. I did not say anything that evening, or the next morning, or for the following 3 weeks. What I did was go back through every statement in that joint email account, every rewards notification, every booking confirmation, every receipt that had arrived in that inbox over the previous 14 months, and I mapped them against Patricia's calendar. I have her calendar access. We had shared calendars for years, the way couples do, so that each of us knew when the other had commitments. Patricia had entries on those evenings, meetings, client dinners, a professional development event. The entries were real, in the sense that she had typed them. They were not real in the sense that they described what had actually happened. I am a lender. I look at documentation for a living. I know what a fabricated paper trail looks like, and I know what a genuine one looks like, and I know that the difference between them is often not in any single document, but in the pattern across all of them. Patricia's pattern did not hold under examination. After 3 weeks, I called an attorney. Her name was Andrea Mills. She had practiced family law for 20 years, and she had the quality that I find most useful in a professional. She did not waste my time. She said, "Robert, you have a documentation trail that most clients in your position don't have. The hotel statements, the calendar entries, the pattern. This is useful. What I need from you now is a complete financial picture." I said, "What am I looking for?" She said, "Anything that moved in the last 14 months that you didn't know about. Any accounts you didn't know existed. Any charges that don't correspond to a household purpose." I spent a week on the financial picture. Patricia and I had a transparent financial life, or so I had believed. Joint accounts, shared investment portfolio, both names on the mortgage. What I found, when I looked with the specific attention of a person who lends money for a living and knows how accounts can be structured, was a credit card I had not known existed. The card had been opened 20 months ago. The balance rotated, charges made, paid off, more charges made. The charges were at restaurants I knew but had never been to with Patricia, at a spa she had mentioned once but said was too expensive, at a jewelry store where I recognized the name, I had not given Patricia jewelry from that store. I brought everything to Andrea. She looked at it for a long time. Then she said, "Robert, in 20 years of family law, I have rarely seen a client walk in with this level of documentation this early in the process." "You work in finance." I said, "I do." She said, "It shows." The confrontation happened on a Tuesday evening. Both sons were at school events I had checked. I had made sure. I put everything on the kitchen table. The hotel statements, the calendar printout, the credit card records. Patricia looked at the table. She looked at me. She said, "How long have you known?" I said, 3 weeks. "I've been talking to an attorney. I have a full legal plan in place. I'm not here to have an emotional confrontation. I'm here to ask you one question." She said, "What question?" I said, "How long?" She said, 14 months. I said, "Who?" She told me. A man she had met through a professional association. Someone I had never met and whose name I had never heard. Someone who was, as far as I could determine, entirely unaware that Patricia had a husband who was paying attention to hotel points. I said, "Patricia, I need you to understand something. I am not going to be emotional about this tonight. I have already been emotional, privately, for 3 weeks. Tonight I need practical answers to practical questions, because we have 2 sons and 17 years and a financial life that has to be handled correctly." She looked at me for a long time. Then she said, "I think I knew this is how you would handle it." I said, "Is that good or bad?" She said, "I don't know. I think it's just you." The divorce took 13 months. Andrea built a strong case. The credit card charges were treated as marital asset dissipation. The outcome was comprehensive in the way that Andrea had promised it would be when she saw the documentation. Our sons are doing as well as boys do when they are told honest things by parents who remain adults. The 16-year-old is quiet about it in the way of someone who is processing. The 13-year-old asked me once whether I was angry at his mother. I said, "I was. I'm working through it." He said, "How?" I said, "By paying attention to the things that are in front of me now instead of the things that are behind me." He said, "That sounds hard." I said, "It's easier than the alternative." He thought about that. Then he said, "You're pretty good at the hard things." I said, "I've had practice." Hotel points. 412 points from a hotel 8 blocks from her office. A number so small that I almost missed it. A number that told a story 14 months in the making. I pay attention to numbers for a living. I should have paid attention to these ones sooner. I pay attention to all of them now. I want to tell you about the 3 weeks I spent not saying anything. I have been asked this by people who know this story. Why did you wait? You found the evidence on a Sunday. Why not say something that Sunday, or the next day, or that week? The honest answer is 2 things, and I want to be honest about both of them. The first is professional. I am a risk analyst. I do not act on incomplete information. I build the picture first, I understand the full exposure, and then I make a decision. That is how I am trained to think, and it is, in situations like this, the correct instinct. The 3 weeks I spent saying nothing were 3 weeks of building a complete picture that served me well in the legal process that followed. The second reason is harder to say. The second reason is that I needed 3 weeks to grieve the thing privately before I made it real by saying it out loud, because the moment I said it, the marriage would be over in a way that it was not yet over. And I needed those 3 weeks to be in the last version of the thing before I moved into the next one. I am not ashamed of this. I think it was human. I think most people who tell you they did not need time are lying to themselves or to you. My attorney Andrea said something to me near the end of the legal process that I have kept. She said, "Robert, in 20 years of family law, I have had hundreds of clients walk into my office at the beginning of these cases. The ones who handle the process with the most integrity, not just legally but humanly, are almost always the ones who took time before they acted. Time to grieve, time to build, time to know their own position before they stated it. You did that. It cost you 3 weeks of knowing something painful. It gave you the ability to handle everything after it with your feet under you. I said, "Was it worth it?" She said, "Look at where you are. 2 sons who are doing well, a settlement that was fair, a co-parenting relationship that functions. That is not an accident." She was right. It was not an accident. I want to say one more thing about the hotel points. About the 412 points from a chain we had never stayed at together. Patricia and I had that joint household email account for 11 years. It existed because it was useful, a single place for household information that both of us could access. We had used it without thinking about it for 11 years. And at some point, Patricia had enrolled in a hotel loyalty program and listed that email as the contact address. Not out of carelessness, out of habit. The email was where household things went, and she had, without thinking, categorized this as a household thing. That is the specific kind of mistake that careful people make over time. The precautions become routine. The routine becomes assumption. And eventually something that should not be visible becomes visible because it got filed in the wrong mental category. 412 points, filed in the wrong place. I pay attention to numbers. I will always pay attention to numbers. My sons are doing well. The 16-year-old is applying to colleges next fall, and the process of researching them with him has been one of the better things about the last year. The 13-year-old has started asking questions about my work, what a risk analyst actually does, what the math looks like, whether it is interesting. I told him, it is about finding the thing that's off, the number that doesn't fit the pattern. He said, like a detective? I said, a very boring detective, with spreadsheets. He said, that sounds like you. Yes, it does. Thank you for being here. Subscribe if you haven't. I'll see you in the next one.